Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be setting up my bullet journal for the month of October. Now, let's get started. I've gone ahead and planned most of my setup in pencil and sketched out all of my drawings beforehand. First, I'm using my Sakura Micron pen in the size 01 to outline my drawings. This month's theme is a simple Halloween autumn theme. So here I have a pumpkin with some vines in the lower right corner, creating a border. Unfortunately, as you're about to see, the saddest thing happen, and I lost the footage of me drawing the vines and the borderline work. But there's no use crying over spilt milk, and I just had to accept it and move on with the video. So the next step after the line work was to create the rest of the border using my Jelly Roll metallic gold pen. The style of the cover page was inspired by old classic book covers where the art is simple black line art with some gold detailing. In this month's setup, I will be using ink instead of paint. Some of you might have heard of something called Inktober, which is an art challenge that was created by artist Jake Parker. Every year in October, an official 31-day prompt list is released, and the challenge is to use different forms of ink to draw and paint, from pens to markers to bottles of ink. I've been participating in this challenge for the past 2 years, so in preparation for Inktober, I ordered a few different color ink bottles, and what better way to start the ink challenge than to create my October theme using only ink. Continuing with the cover art, I decided to use orange ink and a size 000 brush to paint the pumpkin. Using ink is very similar and also very different from using watercolor paint. It's similar in the way it goes onto the page and that you can lighten it by adding water to it, but once it touches the page, it is permanent and also soaks into the paper very quickly. So you don't have much time to work it around before it soaks into the paper. Lastly, I'm using my copper metallic Jelly Roll pen to color in the stem of the pumpkin, and to stick the watercolor paper into the journal, I use double-sided tape. For the calendar page, I decided to go for a layered look. I used a few different pattern journal pages layered on top of each other, and for the calendar itself, I'm using this gray paper. I used my nib pen to write the month title with black ink and line the calendar using one of my Sakura Micron pens. This is a very simple calendar. I mainly use this calendar to mark the days that I post to social media to help me stay a bit more consistent. Using my alphabet stamps, I started out with the days of the week. This too is keeping with the ink theme of the setup. Unfortunately, I wrote that the first is on a Monday, but the first is actually on a Sunday, so I ended up covering up the days of the week with dotted paper, and I changed the week order to start on a Sunday. For the page decoration, I used a crescent moon that I painted using ink and water. If you'd like to see the entire process, be sure to check out my Instagram at Nay's Crafty World. I also used a sticker of a stack of paper and a leaf on top, which I thought fit the theme really well. Ink does take longer to dry, so to make sure that the ink doesn't smudge and transfer between pages, I placed a piece of paper between them to help soak up that extra ink while it continues to dry and while I continue with the setup. Moving on to the weeklies, if you've seen my September setup, you might have noticed that I used basically the same layout as last month. The Dutch doors just work really well and I enjoy the look of them. Using my Sakura Micron pen in the size 005, I lined the pumpkin and leaves as well as wrote in the title and dates. I chose to use this fancy cursive font to give it an aged look, whatever that means. Between the pumpkins and the first weekly, I wanted to bring back the gold detailing from the cover page and create a simple border with some lines and dots. To save some time during the week, I decided to set up all of the weeklies so that they are already finished and ready for me to use them each week, and also plan ahead for any events that are coming up or appointments that I might have during the week. While cutting the weeklies, I leave a small tab that sticks out. These are very handy to have when you're paging through your journal. And I also like to color code them using colors that go with the theme. So for this month's colors, I used my Sakura Koi brush pens in orange, red, yellow, and brown. Once again, I decided to use the orange ink to color in the pumpkins. I must say, I was pleasantly surprised to see that the ink didn't really go through the paper, And I was even able to layer in the shadows, just like I did on the cover page pumpkin. I was careful not to let the ink pool though and leak through the page. The ink also dried faster on this paper, but it still took a few minutes to fully dry, so I took out the page and set it aside while it dried. Behind my weeklies, I like to include my social media planner, where I write the date that I will post and what I want to post. This spread works so well as a little planner for studies or tasks as well. The next part of the page is the background for the Dutch doors. This page will be visible no matter what week you're on. For this page, I wanted to draw simple leaves blowing in the wind. I decided to go back in and add some highlights on the planner using the same colors as I did on the weekly tabs. Below the table, I also made these little boxes. These are for me to track my growth on Instagram and YouTube. Here I am repeating the gold border from the first weekly page onto the last page to bring everything together. I also added in some more gold details around the leaves. The next page is the Inktober prompt list. The list is originally 31 days, but I'm busy on weekends, so I always pick 20 out of the 31 and make my own list. If you're interested in trying out the Inktober prompt list, check out the link in my description down below or look up the many other custom lists on Pinterest. For this page, I wanted to focus on the more Halloween-y part of October. So the text is bold and black and in an older font. The little ghost holding a trick-or-treat cauldron is definitely my favorite. If you're still here and have been enjoying this video so far, please leave a little ghost emoji in the comments down below. I'm sure you've noticed the grid on the next page. There are 10 squares per grid, and I've drawn 2 of them, so 20 in total, and each one of these will be for a different prompt. So I'll be using these squares to plan out the drawings for each prompt, and then on the day I will draw the full version in my sketchbook. For each prompt, I will be drawing something related to the word, but themed around Halloween and the spooky season. And lastly, I decided to add this moon sticker at the bottom of the page. The last page in this setup is my habit tracker. This month, I'm changing it up a little with this dot tracker. On the left hand side is the date, and at the top are all the different habits I want to track. For each day that I do the habit, I can make a little dot under the habit and next to the date. And there you have it, my setup for October. Thanks so much for planning with me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think. And finally, here is my flip through for October. As always, I hope you have a very crafty day.